My paper is on artificial intelligence as the programming working world. Throughout the course of the paper, I talk about the controversies and the problems that people have with it, and then I talk about the opinions that scientists and professionals have on it. Um, Early on into the paper, I talk about how Bill Gates and other famous people, such as Stephen Hawking, have concerns over the creation of artificial intelligence. Bill Gates is worried about the robots taking more human jobs because they are already they are already taking jobs now without the use of artificial intelligence. So if they had that, they'd be able to take even more jobs, and humans would be out of work. Stephen Hawking is more worried about robots and technology becoming so advanced that they could potentially try to harm us. In a quote that he had on the article that I used in my paper, he said, "Whereas the short term impact of AI depends on who controls it, the long term impact depends on whether or not it can be controlled at all." This shows that he is definitely afraid of technology becoming so advanced that it could potentially harm us, and he's also worried about it becoming uncontrollable and us not being able to stop it if they did try to harm us. So, a controversy that I write about in my paper is how we are not able to tell whether or not robots are actually conscious or not. There are a lot of theories about it. One theory that I talk about in the paper is the integrated information theory, which says that there are two requirements for something to be conscious. One is that it has to be highly differentiated, which means that it has to contain a large amount of information inside of it that it can draw upon. And then the second requirement is that it has to be highly integrated, such as like the human brain, where all the information that is stored inside of it is connected together in some way. And I mean, this sort of helps the fact that robots and technology can't be conscious at all, because at least now computers are able to separate the functions and the information that they have inside of them, whereas the human brain cannot. I mean, for example, you have five senses. You can't cut off one of your senses to not be able to feel it. A robot could. The second controversy that I talk about in my paper is whether or not they can be conscious at all. Scientists are pretty much divided down the middle on this subject. Some think that they're close to being able to do that already, and others think that it's never going to be possible because of the way that they are. There's a neuroscientist named Bobby Azarian who explains in an article that I used in the paper that they can't because technology is binary, and that means that technology works off of the use of symbols to keep and use their information that they have inside of them. So for technology, they use a series of ones and zeros, and this means that they can only recognize and interpret the symbols that they have inside of them. They can't ever understand what they mean, whereas the human brain can. There's another opinion that a lot of scientists and experts have on it, though, that the reason that robots can never be conscious or sentient is because they'll always be limited by the code that is inside of them, and they won't be able to break that code at all. Whereas the human brain and humans in general don't have a set limitation such as the coding that robots and technology have in them right now. So they have the ability to think freely and decide on their own on actions that they want to do. The final controversy that I have, and probably the biggest and largest and most important controversy, is whether or not we should create artificial intelligence at all. In my opinion, the main problem that people have with us creating artificial intelligence is whether or not they're religious, because a lot of religions see creating artificial intelligence as wrong. I mean, such as the Christian religion. A lot of Christians believe that it is wrong for us to create artificial intelligence because it is seen as us trying to create life ourselves, whereas they believe that the Christian God is the only one who should be able to create life. And other religions also have this similar opinion on it, that it is just ethically wrong for us to do it, and we shouldn't have the ability to be able to do it. Another part of this is people are concerned that if technology and robots did develop artificial intelligence, then at some point we would have to decide on what we would do about their rights, because if they were to become conscious and sentient, then they would be essentially the same as humans. So we would have to decide, would they have the same rights as animals? Would they have the exact same rights as people? And if we did give them the exact same rights as people, what about like personal technology such as phones and the iPad that I'm recording this on right now? Would they have rights? Would it be wrong to harm them in some way? It would also create a lot of political, violence and in debate, and also there would be some kind of racism around it, similar to like how blacks were discriminated against when the United States started. There would be people that would see robots as wrong that have artificial intelligence and would discriminate against them. A third part of this controversy would be that a lot more jobs would be taken, such as how Bill Gates is worried about. Because, obviously, if robots can take some of our jobs now without the use of artificial intelligence, if they did obtain artificial intelligence, then they'd be able to do human jobs most likely better than we could because of the processing power that they would have inside of them, and also due to them probably be able to work for less money or possibly no money at all. A fourth topic of this controversy is human and robot relationships. Especially in Japan right now, there's a large number of the population that have relationships with technology and robotics. And this could potentially harm the human birth rate and could possibly make the human race decline. And also it would just make it where even if they didn't have the relationships between them in that way, they would at least most likely become more addicted to technology, because of the fact that technology would obviously advance if artificial intelligence were created, and they would be able to use their technology in more ways and be able to become more addicted to it. And then the final topic of this controversy would be that robots could, if they developed artificial intelligence, have the decision and the free will to do whatever they wanted to. And at this point, they could turn to doing violent things, doing bad things, doing crime in the same way that humans do. And if they did, how would we prevent that, and how would we stop that? If they did choose to commit crime, would humans be able to stop that? They could be slightly more resilient than humans are, and if so, then we would also probably have to put robots and technology into the law enforcement field, which would take even more jobs away from humans and put humans even higher up in the working world. Another thing about this would be that, returning to the jobs subject, that if robots were to be put into politics, then they would be able to rise higher up through the ranks and be potentially in charge of humans, and eventually that could lead to robotics and technology being in charge of the federal government in the United States and in other countries being in charge of the government, and we would lose all human contact in the government of our nations, which people would most likely not like. So in conclusion, there is a lot of controversies about artificial intelligence and it being created, and if it were created, what we would do about it being created, and the potential effects and results of it being created and being put into the working world. As of right now, though, we do not have the technology to create artificial intelligence, and it's probably a little ways off into the future. And also, even if we did create it at this time, we don't have the capability to understand whether or not robots would be truly conscious or sentient. So we wouldn't be able to prove that it is artificial intelligence.